Hello and welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about how much it costs to build this system I've got in place here so far. I had a couple of subscribers put some comments saying, well, how much did this cost you to do this? And before I get to that, I actually want to talk about why I chose this specific Renogy 48 volt solar inverter charger. And that kind of helps drive why the cost it is what it is. I mean, you could do this a lot cheaper. But I wanted to buy something that was an all-in-one system like this. And so normally when you buy an all-in-one system like this, it's usually pushing around 3,000 watts or bigger. You could obviously buy really big ones. But if you go below that, if you go to like the 2,000 watt area, then you're gonna have to buy a separate inverter and a separate solar charger, and you're gonna have to connect it all together. And it's not gonna come with a really nice screen on it like this one's got on it to kind of tell you what's going on. So that's one of the main reasons why I went with an all-in-one system. And so that kind of pushed me into the price range that I ended up being in. And then why I went with this one specifically is because this one only needs 60 volts of solar power to come into it to actually start charging the battery down here. And I don't know how much power I'm going to be generating out there off-grid. I'm only going to have a couple of solar panels is my plan anyways, to put only a couple of solar panels. And so I want to make sure that with the few amount of solar panels that I'm going to have, that it will be able to produce at least 60 volts DC. Because if it's not producing 60 volts DC, then that's not enough for this to actually charge a 48 volt battery. So that's kind of why I chose this one. When you look at some of the other ones that are out there like these and bigger ones, they need like 120 volts DC or even more to actually get them to charge. So this is the one that I found that had the lowest DC voltage, charging voltage that it needed to actually run. So that's one reason why I bought this one and kind of went with it. And then when I decided to go with this unit, that's when I decided, okay, well, I'll just get a battery of the same company and go with it. So that was kind of my decision factor in the situation. And then, like I said, I probably don't need the 3,500 watts out of this for what I'm going to do with it up there, but it's probably the lowest I could go and have an all-in-one system like this. I do have another system that I'm probably going to build that's going to have, probably a 2,000 watt system, and that'll have the individual components. I'll show you that, guys, at some other time. But let's talk about the cost of what it took to do this. And so this machine here, the inverter charger, that was, I'll call it $600 for that piece alone. And then the other big piece, cost-wise, is the battery down here. The battery was probably closer to $650 when I purchased that. So that was, that is the big cost. It's, you got $650 there, you got $600 there, and then the next biggest cost after that is just the wires that go into this. So the wires that I bought a 10-foot gauge of this wire, and that was $70, I believe. And then this circuit breaker that goes between the battery and the inverter was, I think it was like $17, but we'll call it $20. And then some other things that I had to get, just incidental things, is I bought a wire crimping kit here that came with some crimps on it, and the actual tool itself, I believe this was $35. And it actually came with this cutter tool too that you need to cut this big cable with. And it also came with some heat shrink wraps to go around it. I'll show you what I do with these up there. And I also bought this ferrule kit, which comes with, the tool to clamp the ferrules on it, and a bunch of ferrules in it, different sizes. And so I used those things with the kit. And so I ended up putting ends on the batteries here. So I put those ends on the batteries, you can see here, and I put the heat shrink wrapping on them here. So that's how I did for my ends of my cables. I did the same thing up here in the cables I put in the inverter. And then I put those ferrules on here. I put ferrules on these and sheet rinked them. I haven't done these two yet, but eventually we'll do those two. So that's where I use the ferrules and the heat shrink. And I actually even put some ferrules on this cable. I haven't included this cable when I'm talking the cost today, because you don't really necessarily need that to make this work. You could go buy one of these $5 things and hook that directly into it if you wanted to, which is what I originally did. So all in, we're probably about $1,400 in this system to put this all together with the inverter and the breaker and the battery down there. Like I said, about $1,400 is kind of what we're into it. That's not even including the solar panels that I'm going to hook up to it. And I bought the solar panels. I haven't showed those to you guys yet, but I'll get those set up eventually and show them to you. I bought those online, and I believe I paid $140 for each panel, and the panels I bought have 405 watts they push out of them, so almost 1200 watts of power that'll come out of those panels, and they should be pushing more than 60 volts when I hook them up in series. So it should be enough to push power into this to be able to charge that battery if I've got okay sunlight. If we don't have good sunlight, then we don't get any power at that point. I'll show you those, and like I said, those are about 140 a piece. I bought 3 of them, but I'm not going to include that in this price as I'm showing you here today. So this is about $1,400 worth of stuff when you talk about the battery, the cables, the circuit breaker here, and the inverter itself. And like I said, it's probably, this is probably, I would say, a medium-sized system. You could probably run a shed or a garage or something like that off of this type of system. I mean, it'll even run power tools because it pushes out, like I said, 3,500 watts. So even starting up some smaller motors and stuff, probably not a problem for it. But that's the total cost I have in the system. I just want to make this video and tell you guys about that since I've had some questions on it. And in future videos, I'll show you a smaller system I'm probably going to be working on, and I'll show you those solar panels as well. If you're interested in any of the things I've talked about on here, I've got links to it down in the video description below, so you can go take a look at them. So with that, I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video. Give me some comments, as always, about what you think about the cost and if this is something you might do. And we will see you guys on the next one.